Hello and welcome back to Mark's Garden UK at Rose Cottage near Nantwich in Cheshire, where hopefully you can see it's around Halloween. In fact, it's Halloween tomorrow. It's the 30th of October today. It's a very wet and windy Sunday. So in this video, I'm going to have a few mindful moments and share with you 13 on looking for some surprising and yet beautiful things which I've observed and witnessed in my garden this morning. Now, in my day job, I do personal development, and we talk about this thing called active listening, where you really stop and listen and hear what people are actually saying to you. So in this video, I'm going to practice some active looking, where I look and stop and stand and meditate and observe and have a mindful moment and really see what's in front of my eyes, because I think in life we do tend to breeze past things without really noticing what's going on. So here goes. For Halloween, 13 mindful moments at Mark's Garden UK. And let's start off with these Agapanthus. It's October. The surprising thing to me is that they're actually, some of them, still in bloom. Look at this, a beautiful blue bloom here and here. Really surprising, considering it's November in 2 days' time, and it's surprisingly mild despite the fact that it's wet and windy. So that's the first thing to observe in the garden, is these beautiful ultraviolet blue blooms on these Agapanthus. But right next to these there are thousands of seeds, and let's have a close-up look at some of these seeds as they start to dry out, and I'll be harvesting some of these seeds in a video very soon. And you are actually supposed to leave these seed pods on the plant to dry out before you harvest them. And what I've noticed them is that many of them have disappeared, and as hard as I look on the floor beneath the seed pod, I can't see any. So I wonder if birds have come and taken these, or possibly if they have dropped on the floor, a rodent might have picked them up. In either event, I'm very happy, because I'm quite happy to feed the birds and or the rodents in the garden. But here, let's have a look at this. Here's one that has dried out, and look underneath these. I'll pull that off and put it into my hand. These are the seeds here in this casement. Are just tiny black seeds, and I'll be gathering these up into cardboard boxes in the very near future, and I will be putting each seed pod or seed head from each individual plant in a different box so that they don't all get mixed up, so that I'll be able to identify them. But look there, look, lovely jet black seeds that make a kind of a paper-like rustle as you touch them. I'm going to waste these. The rodents can have those on the floor. There's plenty more to go at. So Agapanthus blooms and Agapanthus seed heads. And the next surprising find in my garden is this bush, which, when you walk past it, is actually pretty average and inconspicuous. It's only when you stop and look inside the bush you see these beautiful little golden fruits. Now, I've used a plant identification app called Picture This to identify these fruits, and I'll show you one in close-up. And I now know that this is a Japanese Quince. You have to be really quite careful, because it's got quite sharp thorns on this. And here on it there are 1, 2, 3, 4 little Japanese Quince fruits, which I would not have noticed had I not come out and stopped and looked. And here they are, beautiful golden yellow circular round fruits. I'm going to look on the internet to see if they're edible, and I might do something with them. Surprise number 3 is not far from the quince. It's down here on the edge of the drive, and it's a type of fungus called a hard puffball fungus. And there are 5 or 6 of them here. Let me give you a close-up. And here they are in the gravel on the driveway, almost the same colour as the gravel, and you probably wouldn't notice them if you weren't stopping and looking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them there are here. And this is a hard-skinned puffball fungus. I'm not going to touch it because I'm not absolutely sure whether this is poisonous or not. But look at the skin of it there. It's all cracked and gnarled. I wish these were truffles in a way, because then I could pick them up and sell them. Hard-skinned puffball fungus. More fungi in a moment. I could probably do a whole video on fungi, given the number of them I found in my garden. And the next autumn Halloween surprise in my garden is here in the tree fern courtyard, where I have all my shade-loving plants. But it's this Arum lily. Now bear in mind, it's the last day of October tomorrow, and we'll be into November. This Arum lily is still beautiful and lush and green, but not only that, it's pushing out a bloom, a flower. Soon we'll have a lovely, if this mild weather continues, I suspect a lovely open white, almost bowl-shaped flower on top of this, which will look beautiful at night. I have underlighting in this courtyard. I can't wait to see if that turns out to a bloom. But to me, for October, November, that's a huge surprise. Something else to show you here behind me, which I only noticed because I was on my hands and knees in this courtyard having a look at the Mind Your Own Business. Come and see this. I'm going to take you on a mysterious, magical journey underneath the canopy of this short tree fern which I've got on the edge of the round patio. You won't believe what you see. It's quite amazing. Just look down here underneath the canopy at this beautiful little colony of toadstools or mushrooms. Just spend a moment admiring them. Aren't they incredible? It's like a little village popping up out of the Mind Your Own Business all round the base of the trunk of this small tree fern. You just don't get to see things like this unless you stop and look and observe. And the way they contrast against the green of the Mind Your Own Business, which is slowly but surely spreading out. I want that. I want this Mind Your Own Business to give me a carpet. And whilst we're down here, let's look at the hostas. All going yellow, dying off for the winter. And then in the spring, they'll sprout up again. Now, if my nephew and niece were here, I'd be talking about a little colony of fairies which come out and live under these toadstools at night. How mystical and magical. So there's a colony of toadstools. And there is an Arum lily. Let's go and have a look in the vegetable compound. There are three things I want to look at in more detail in this compound, and funnily enough, they're all in this shot that you can see now. The first one of which is this beautiful rose bloom here, look. End of October, start of November, and I'm getting a rose bloom. There's two of them, 1, 2, and there's a third bud there. This is the rose which I moved from the front of the cottage, which you can see in a video on my channel. And people have asked how it's doing. Well, you can see how it's doing. It's doing incredibly well. Eventually, I'll decide on a garden design project to house these roses. Here's the second one. They're both doing fine. Let's go and have a look at the artichokes, which I rescued from a garden centre at a discounted price. And here they are in this tub right before your eyes. And what's surprising to me is not the fact that they've actually done okay, because they have all done all right. There were 3, I've now got 6 or 7 because they divided. What's surprising me is the fact that they're actually producing new baby globe artichokes. Look, globe artichokes there. Globe artichokes are different to Jerusalem artichokes, because with a globe artichoke, the flower bud is the thing that you eat before it gets mature. I did do a video on this, you can see it on my channel, as opposed to Jerusalem artichoke, which are members of the ginger family. And with a Jerusalem artichoke, you eat the root, which is beneath the ground. But these, considering again it's, I keep repeating myself, October, November, are very surprising. I suspect these won't ever come to maturity, but I think it says something about the weather conditions that we're experiencing at the moment, incredibly mild. I'm going to talk to you about lettuces now, but more importantly, lettuce seeds. Do you remember? And if you don't, of course, you can see it in a video on my channel. I had mixed blessings with my first time veg plot, and one of the things that went wrong was I overseeded the lettuces had just put too many in a small space, and then I didn't get round to thinning them out. Anyway, I did rescue some, and these are some of the 3, 4, 5, 6 plants that actually survived. And I have been taking the leaves off these and eating them, but I decided to try an experiment, which was let them bolt, literally let them go to seed. And look here at the top of these, little yellow flowers, beautiful, little delicate yellow flowers. Now it's hard for me to believe there's actually some kind of insect out there that may come along and pollinate them at this time of year, but perhaps the wind pollinated, you never know. Or perhaps they're self-fertile, maybe they don't need pollinating, but when they become seeds, I'm going to try and harvest them and grow lettuces from those seeds next year. And if that happens, imagine the value I will get from 1 packet of seeds that I bought last year. It's not only happened with these little gem lettuces here, these are 3 little gem. I've also got Lola Rosso here, going to seed, flowering and going to seed. So if you want to see how all this turns out, subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell. But there we go, lettuces which have gone to seed. Let's see if we can gather some. Another little fruit and veg story for you next. A cauliflower. This is my bulk bag hugelkultur raised bed. A bit of an experiment. I filled the bottom half of this bulk bag with garden waste, and I topped it off with a layer of topsoil, and I planted a lot of seedlings in here, fruit and veg seedlings, but they were absolutely decimated by butterflies and caterpillars. I think it's the cabbage white butterfly, and there were thousands of caterpillars all over. Anyway, I gave up on them, and I've just come back to this to have a look, and lo and behold, those cabbages and cauliflowers which were decimated by those butterflies and caterpillars have actually come back to life, and they're still growing. This is a cabbage there, but right here in the middle is a tiny little cauliflower, a beautiful little white, about the size of a large marble cauliflower, and I'm really pleased about that. I'm going to treat this with a lot of love and attention now, and hopefully I might even have a cauliflower for Christmas dinner. What a surprise. The next surprise is over here in the Wildflower meadow, and there are 2 surprises here that I'm going to tell you about. In fact, there are 3, but they're not included in the list of 13, otherwise I'd just keep adding numbers. The first one is the fact that this Wildflower meadow, which I thought was dead and gone and completely gone over, has suddenly again come into like a second flush of blossoms and blooms, and everywhere there are little flowers, a little pink one, a little yellow one, some cornflowers. Here, the one that looks like a bottle brush, but I know it isn't. There's flowers everywhere. A wonderful surprise. There's one at the back there, a beautiful big orange sort of dahlia sunflower looking flower. And that story is repeated throughout. Down here at my feet is another little fungus. It looks like a mushroom that you might buy from a supermarket. Of course, I'm not going to pick it up and eat it, but what's interesting about this is it's got little nibble marks on the side of it, which indicates to me that there is wildlife in this, the wildlife area of my garden, because those nibble marks have probably been made by some kind of rodent. Speaking of rodents, I'm going to show you something underneath the raised stepping stones which I put in this border when I made my Wildflower meadow. And I did that deliberately because I was trying to encourage wildlife underneath those raised stepping stones, and it seems to have worked. Let me show you what I mean. And these are those stepping stones here, and they run all the way along the back of the Wildflower meadow, all the way along the back of it. And I raised them up on bricks, and I was trying to encourage wildlife to go underneath. Anyway, it's happened. I'm going to lift one up in a minute and show you why I know it's happened, because there's evidence of wildlife underneath one of these stones that could not have got there had wildlife not taken it there. Underneath this one here, and the same is true for all of them. There's a little collection of little red berries right in the centre. How could that have got there if it wasn't taken there by a mouse or a vole or some kind of rodent? Also under here, there are some nibbled damsons and some seeds, wildflower seeds, dozens of them, all taken there probably by a nocturnal rodent at night, hiding underneath this slab from an owl, a tawny owl or a barn owl. And this is exactly why I did this, raise them up on bricks. But there it is, and more evidence of wildlife, thousands of woodlice. The same is true for each and every one of these slabs, because I've had a sneaky peek. There we go, a success in the wildlife corner of the garden. Next is another little fungus. It's down here in the grass. You wouldn't see it unless you were looking for it because it's tiny. But despite the fact that it's tiny, it's also incredibly beautiful. It's an ink cap. And I know that because I've used my plant identification app. It's down here. And there are a little colony of them amongst these fallen leaves. Let me pull a few leaves out of the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Little circular white toadstool heads. There's one. Just look at the detail. Let me just pull the grass away from it so that the camera focuses on it and not the grass. Look at that there. Isn't that perfect? It's like a little jellyfish on top of a stalk, and it's no bigger, certainly, than my thumbnail. It's smaller than my thumbnail. Tiny little thing. And as I say, there's a little colony all around here, and what I find quite mysterious and magical about these is you go to bed and they're not there, and you wake up the next morning and there's a big circle of them in the lawn, like a fairy circle. Quite mysterious and magical. Kind of makes you wonder what's going on in the garden at night while you're asleep. Isn't that exquisite? An ink cap. Well, we're walking over to the lavender, which I want to talk to you about next. Just look at these worm casts here, look. Evidence that there's plenty of worms underneath this soil. And those worms are fertilising this soil as they go past, because what they do is they take in food at one end and digest it and squirt it out at the other end, and that produces all kinds of chemicals which fertilises the soil. And the stuff that they squirt out at the other end, their poo, gets nibbled on and munched on by bacteria and microorganisms, and that's how soil gets fertilised. And then the plants come along and eat it, and very often produce food for us. That's why this food chain is so important. Now, I've just mentioned lavenders to you, and here they are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in this Mediterranean style scented border along the side of the cottage. I deliberately put this on the side of this path so that when you walk past you would get the scents and the aromas, especially from this thyme here, which you might brush with your foot. It really is a strong, powerful smell of the Mediterranean. But the surprising thing about these lavenders, these were late developers. I put them in and they were quite small, probably about the size of my 2 fists, and they did nothing, and then suddenly they've exploded into growth. And at the top we've still got lots of beautiful lavender flowers. I want to cut these and put them in the house so that they can let off relaxing lavender essential oils, but as recently as last week I saw bees on these flowers, so I'm going to leave them, which gives me a bit of a problem because I am aware that I'm supposed to trim this lavender back before it becomes woody, but I don't want to trim it whilst it's still feeding insects with nectar. So I'm going to leave it as long as I possibly can, and then I will prune this lavender. Oh, what a beautiful lavender smell. Lavender flowers at the end of October. So there you go, 13 wonderful, mindful surprises in my Halloween garden that you only really see these things if you stop and look. Hope you've enjoyed that. Please do subscribe if you haven't already done so. Hit the notifications bell and comment below, because it's always nice to hear from you. And I know I'm a bit behind with some of my replies at the moment, so I'll be getting on with that very soon. The sun's come out. What a wonderful day. So it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from him. Goodbye.